This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Grieve Believe. And, we are in, uh, wow, our second year, and we just haven't taken really much of a break, although uh, last month we did because none of us were going to be around on the third Monday of the month. So we took a little bit of a break. But as we go into the holidays, um, sadly, we hear a lot about depression and especially young people who are feeling it in some ways more than any other generation. And depression often can lead to something even worse, and that is suicide. And my guest today is Marla Mase, and I've had Marla on um, my program as well. And I know the story about the Lael Project, but if you could give us a little bit of a background, number one, what the project is and why did you even develop it?
Okay. Well, the Lael Project is basically it's a tribute to my daughter Lael, who died by suicide. It's not a tribute; it's partly a tribute, but that's not what it's mostly. Who died by suicide 7 years ago. She had struggled for a long time with depression and anorexia, eating disorders, and from age 11 was in and out of treatment and did well for a while, and very much suicidality. She tried killing herself a few times, and this time, when she was a month short of turning 25. So it's been 7 years. Anyway, so the Lael Project, because my daughter was an amazing singer-songwriter, like really, really beautiful singer. And so she has two albums out under Lael Summer, which is her name and her middle name. And it was always like, wow, I'd want, and she was doing well. She was written up as like the one to watch out for and all that. So it took me a while. It took about 7 years now. Like now I'm ready to do this, which is to, where we are basically, re-releasing music. We've reimagined some of the tunes. We've remixed them. I also run a record label. And so the people who produce her records are, very much involved and loved her. So and also releasing Never Before Heard tracks. She had recorded a couple of demos, like literally on the iPhone, like a week before she died, she was going to start doing a new album. And because of technology, now we were able to extract her vocal, which is so great that they didn't even have to do anything with it, and created a really great track around it, even though they had the sound. So it's a lot of great stuff in terms of music, but basically the Lael Project became bigger than that. It's basically, you know, yes, a tribute to my daughter as a young person, and her legacy, and her life story as an artist. But it's also, um, more importantly, like it was it's more importantly that it's a way that we want to tell her story, and through her music and through her words and just through, me talking about her or whatever, to basically like kind of join the growing community of people who are opening up conversations, sharing stories. Don't stay silent. Let's all be connected, um, to break stigma and to show that well, one, I mean, as a mother, this is not about me, but, on a side note is that, I'm surviving it, and that's a whole other thing. But just really like, yeah, through her music to show that, like, and Lael, because Lael's, besides that Lael was an amazing songwriter and a great human being, one of the parts about her being a great human being is that she had really helped a lot of people when she graduated college, and she went to like the prestigious like Thornton School of Music at USC, like a program that like 20 kids got in. She decided to work at a treatment center, and she worked in a very exclusive one in LA and was like just a resident assistant, and then got promoted to like OCD exposure therapist. But the point of it is that people, when she died, they reached out to me and they were like, people who were there, patients, clients, and they were like, your daughter's the reason I'm alive today. Like her heart, she got it. She understood me, and and a bunch of them like individually like flew here. They went to visit her grave because then most of them were from California. They came to see a play that we had put up that we had all written together. It's called The Pill, because it's just another story. So like it really just showed like they were just like she was the one, not like not that there was anything wrong with the therapist and all that, but it's because she got it. She understood their pain so much. And they also said she wouldn't let me get away with stuff, but on the other hand, and there's a bunch that still write me all the time about her music. So it just, just made me realize that we just want to like, join the community of like to write love on her arms and all these different things that are just like, hey, let's talk about this, and I have some not regrets, and I've shared this with you that time, Karen, like we did, I mean, knew she was suicidal and it was open, but it wasn't something I didn't ask her. I didn't check in a lot, even though like she was living with me last 8 months of her life because she had a bad suicide attempt, as if there's a good one, um, in LA on election day 2016. And I didn't know if she was alive or dead, and I suspected, and I had a friend break down her door, and she was there. And then she came back to live with me in Brooklyn, and she was doing okay that year, but um, the point is, and now I'm like, what am I saying? I guess this is what happens when you go into grief.
Right.
No, that she was that, so we knew she was depressed. It wasn't like, but I just realized now, like I could have asked more often, like, hey, are you feeling suicidal? Like just checking in a little bit. I mean, she had her therapies and she was on medication. She was very much, she did like get help, like go for help. She was doing DBT. I mean, all her whole life. She wasn't someone who was like no help. Um, and so, it's so that's just like some of the things. And just to like us just not go like, oh no, let's not talk about it. We would try to like, let's not bring it up because we don't want to remind her like it's like that she's suicidal, which is crazy. It's like me now, like saying, no, people, you can ask me about my daughter because you're not going to remind me that my daughter died. Like I'm like, there's
Right.
never a time when you'd be like, oh, let's not like upset Marla. It's like, no, and I think it's the same maybe with being suicidal, like they're not forgetting if they are. So that's kind of what it is. And we are starting it. So we're doing the first release of the first single of her music. It's December 6th, which just happens to be, it's not one of her originals. Everything, most of it's originals. And a lot of it is about her struggles, most of it, whether they're empowering songs or, ballads, a little bit more, intense in terms of emotional like that. But the first one she did was just like a karaoke. She did a carpool karaoke thing. She used to do them a lot, like sneakily. And she did an amazing version of Hello that she just recorded in her car, just like the thing looking at her. It's amazing. Like I'm telling you, you'll be blown away. Adele's, and then after she died, whenever time I hear the song, it's like you don't hear it the same when you know she's not alive. Like she's sitting there like, hello, it's me. It's been a while. I'm calling from the other side. And anyone who knows, and it's unbelievable. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Karen. It's unbelievable.
Haven't
She's
yet.
so
No.
beautiful. I mean, I hate to say that. She's so abs. I'll share it with you guys afterward. And what we did is the only thing that we changed is, again, they got rid of the karaoke track behind it and they created a nicer track, but it's still the same video, the same vocals, and it's just an intro. And then we're
What
gonna.
what you're sharing with us and our listeners is something that I was taken aback by in our first conversation because you sometimes think when you're talking to a parent who has lost a child and then lost a child to suicide, you don't expect them to be as you're vocal, but you've you're coming to grips with it. You're never going to be totally okay with it, but you've
Never.
come to grips with it where you can talk about it and you know how important that is for your healing and for the healing of those around you.
Yes.
And I got that impression too when I was talking to your father that yes, he can talk about it. That's part of his healing process. She was very, very much a part of your life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
depression, obviously, I
My
hate to,
psychiatrist recently said to me that he thought I sounded blasé when she first died, which it was definitely not at all the case. I was like, no, that was shock.
yeah, I'm
Uh,
sure.
That was shock. And I'm not saying you said I'm blasé. Um, it's just no, it is definitely like the worst thing that will happen to you. That is absolutely true. I mean, I think there's degrees of where worse things can be, um, but it is definitely not easy. It's very every cell in my body has changed. Let's just put it that way. And I knew that from the minute she died. What?
Can I ask you a question?
Of course, of course.
I am really curious about how going through the process of creating your daughter's album or albums, has affected you emotionally, and how has that changed? I'm sure this is taking time. How has it changed over the process, over this time period? How has your emotional state been, from when you first started this project to where you are now?
Honestly, that's a really great question because the truth is, it was always a thing that we wanted to do, but we really kind of started like 2 years ago with Tomas and James were the producers of the record, original records, and who were doing all they started working on it to do it. And I was like, just, I don't want to be there. Like, I can't, it's very painful. I know it's probably painful for them, but obviously different than for me. So I was like, I can't like really be in the studio like doing this. Now that we're starting to like release it as like, we have the website up and we started really getting more intensely with press and in like say the spring. And it's been tough for me. Like in the beginning, it still is. Like it was like getting in and like, okay, we need to get a website. And then I'm like, oh, my daughter's now a project, you know. Now my daughter's a project. She's no longer, Lael or, and I had to like look for pictures and like do stuff and I had to like take out her computer, which I haven't taken out in a long time, and just like open it and look through and guess the password. She was very organized, so everything was very organized. But like guess the passwords and look for things. And I remember one day like spending a few hours, and I was like, whoa, I gotta just stop. Like this is too much, and I can only do a little bit at a time, which is why I do have Tomas Donker, who's my partner in True Groove and in the music and a lot of stuff. He's been handling a lot of that for me because I can't fully be like all the time. And yet, one of the things, so it's tough. It's really emotional and hard. Like just yeah, that opening just and also like even like I mean I joke, but it's not a joke. Like even re-releasing her songs or doing this, it's like as a mother, I'm just as afraid of like making a mistake. It's like it's so precious to me that I'm scared of like doing the wrong thing for my daughter, even in her death. Like she's dead, but I'm still like, oh, I don't want to like, can I curse? No, I don't want to fuck up. I don't know if this is a
Yeah,
cursing.
that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't want to like, fuck her up by like, like what if I'm doing like, what if it's not the right, perfect way they're doing it? And I have been more on them, but like on the other hand, because I'm so scared of like, Elle, I hope I don't mess up. Like I'm scared of like when if it gets rejected or people like haters out there. And I'm like, oh God, that's going to be more pain. And I'm making some kind of it's like the same thing as when your kid is alive. You don't want to make a mistake.
So you've really been grieving for a very long time because she was ill at a very young age.
In
And so,
20 years. Yeah.
and we don't think of grief typically as something that just keeps going on and changing over the years. We think, something happens, we grieve over it, and society thinks that then we should be okay. And that we've talked about this many times. That's not the case.
Right.
There are moments of good times. There are moments of, I won't say forgetting, but it's not heavily weighing on us. But you mentioned today before we went online that your son, whose birthday it is, and happy birthday to him, and hopefully it will be a happy birthday. He too suffers from depression.
Yeah.
So, is this something that you saw in your family before you had your kids?
No, this
Yeah.
is why I feel like I've been like my life has been really like what devastated by mental health issues, like really, and it with my children, not like my parents or even myself. Yes, I have anxiety. I used to have bad panic attacks, but not to this degree. So it really kind of blindsided me in the sense of um like I'm like so much shock. Like I just can't believe that this is like in my life. Like I mean, I love my life and I love my children and I do the same thing all over again, but I just, I can't believe it. Like I am, I never know, not at all. I mean, and with my son, in manifesting differently, um, even though it's still he didn't manifest younger. Like, oh, I saw stuff pretty young. Like we just knew something was. Now I can look back maybe with my son, but actually, she never had psychoses, and he has a little bit more of some psychoses stuff, disorganized thinking and pressured speech and just sorts different things, and also brilliant and amazing. But it's hard, and it's his birthday, and you said you hope he had a birthday, but no, he's in India. He's in Southern India. He's been like, all over the world meditating and Buddhism, and he's a yogi and all this stuff. And for some reason, he doesn't want to be on medication anymore. He used to be, and he stopped. And he was on it before it got like this bad. And then his sister died. It was starting before she died. Then we saw some things. It was a manic episode when he was in college. They thought maybe it was from smoking pot. And so and then she died. And so he was in the middle of kind of recovering. And then she killed herself. So then it was like his worst fear. He's the younger brother, 4 years younger. So he grew up with her like in and out of treatment and worrying about her dying all the time, And then she did. And then like a year or two later, when he seemed to be doing a bit better and he went back to college, he finished, and then he's like brilliant. He's like, also. And then his father got diagnosed with ALS, and then he died. That's my ex-husband, who I'm very close with. So it's a lot of grief. And watching Isaac, my ex-husband, and his father, I having came back to be here and watching his father die. And I wasn't equipped at all because he was still so traumatized and also with his own issues. I mean, once his father died, it was like he just completely, I mean, it was heading that way anyway. And then my mother died 2 months after Isaac died. So I've had a lot of loss in the last years. And so I kind of feel like, what happened to my family? Like, I don't have a family. Like, I'm a mother, and I do have Yanai, and he is alive. And thank God, thank God. And I'm terrified of him killing himself. So I'm constantly, and it's not like I'm completely unrealistic, because I know the worst can happen. I don't expect it. I know the worst can happen, but I also, and I also know the statistically it goes up if someone in the family has killed themselves. So I'm nervous, and I've earned my right to catastrophize, but I'm also, Al-Anon has really helped me a lot. I really live in a moment to moment. I know I'm not in charge. I'm not in control of other people's lives. I have a lot of recovery with me in that. I've been going for like 18 years, even before like when Lael first. So yeah, it's been it's messed up. I'm always like, it's really tough. It's like I said to someone today, it's like if you had one kid who had cancer and then they died, and then all of a sudden the other kid gets cancer. I kind of feel like, even though it's like, what? Like, not that I was relieved at all when Lael died, and not at all. I mean, it was devastating, and it's like, but there was a little bit like, oh, I'm not going to be dealing with these things. And yet I am dealing with these things. And in some ways, they seem even harder because of his struggle is really.
So what are some of the things that you can do for yourself on a daily basis to relieve some of that anxiety? I mean, I'm sure it's not easy worrying about your son, and just being a parent, even if your son didn't have these issues, we worry about our kids. I didn't hear from my son for about 24 hours this past weekend, and I was freaking out. And then when he called, it was like, oh, you called. And I mean, there was no reason for me to do that, but that's the mother instinct. So I can't imagine for you, but you have things that you can do that can make you feel good and sort of remove you from some of these issues.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's miraculous too, that I can regain my serenity. And that, I will say, has a lot to do with, for me, the Al-Anon program, which I went in originally because I had an alcoholic boyfriend. But I quickly realized that it applied for my daughter, who was a teenager then. Because I realized, like, no matter what I did or said, like, I couldn't get her to eat. It didn't matter no logic, no anything, to the point where eventually, like, I kind of had a nervous breakdown. That's when she went away for a long time and kind of got some recovery. So that, just the general being in something like that for a long time, like, I realized, like, I can, like I said, be in the moment. I can let people know. I can really be in the moment and turn it over. There's a point where I'm like, right, there's nothing I can do about this. That's as much as I can do. I can't make someone do anything. And I really have that inside of me. So I can turn it over to whatever. It doesn't have to even believe you have to believe in God or anything like that. Just whatever. Just it's not me. I can do that. And when I'm with people, I'm really good when I'm better when I'm around people and friends, which I'm not. I am a lot, but I was someone who was always in partnership, and this is the first time I've been like single in the last few years. So that's just been a different thing. So where I am alone a lot and I'm strong about it. But when I'm with friends, it's fine. I can enjoy myself. I can do it. I'm creative. I write, I do music, I perform. Um, I have many albums out. Like the touring, I love live performing, but also just like walking in the park, you know, more than anything, it's the simple things. The truth is, it's the simpler the thing, the more I regain my serenity. Like sitting on a tree root and, you know, reading or writing or just sitting there and meditating or not even or movement, being with people like doing this. I mean, I always say this, it's like, you know sharing. That's why one of the things with Lael Project is sharing stories and sharing it doesn't always have to be heavy and dark,
Right.
but it really helps me stay serene. I don't keep, it's not like I'm serene all the time no matter what. Like, but I can lose it and I can take it back, and that is a miracle, because given what's going on, it's really amazing. And just, yeah, I can name a whole bunch of other things as well. I did go to a grief group at one point, Valel, the great grief counselor, Shaban. Um, and actually, after this, I haven't joined the mamas group. This is a mothers group of, mothers who've lost their kids, not all to suicide. Um, and that can be helpful. And helping other people, that's always a thing. Like if I can be of service, and the truth is, like when she first died, you start reading like, oh, when you go through this, you'll become more compassionate. Like I hesitate to say there's any gifts. I still am fighting that, but I've always been a compassionate person, but I have become more compassionate, no question about it. And I'm stronger. I'm a hell of a lot stronger than when I was young. I didn't think I was afraid to be alone with my kids when they were really young, and now I'm like, wow, I am really strong. Whoa. I mean, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, the way to get strong, but, and I don't know, so it's a minute, it really is a minute at a time. I don't know what else to say,
Yeah. When this first happened, I'm curious, the first time you actually felt happiness or contentment after your daughter died, did you have feelings of guilt for feeling that way?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to remember like a moment when that happened, but I do remember feeling like moments when it was like, okay, let me put it this way. So when she first died, and it's still there, it's like I felt like someone put a virtual reality helmet on my head, and like the screen is like right in front of my eyes, and it was like loud, 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 loud. Like I could not even, I can't even explain it, because it wasn't like, it was just like, it was like ever all present. It's kind of like when you first have a baby in a way, but more intense because they're not alive. And I think when there was moments of like not feeling like the screen was like completely there, like, you know what I mean? Like even if it wasn't happiness, but just like, oh wait, for a minute, like I forgot the screen was there. There could have been like, oh, like almost like, yeah, you want to hold on to, especially in the beginning, the grief. And I still do, because the more, if you don't feel the grief, then you feel like there's more distance between you and your child. So I always say I'm like that whale, that whale, the orca that was swam around with her dead calf pup for a while, and I just feel like I was just writing about it actually, like I'm still carrying it around. Like I haven't, I can't. And I remember yeah, so in the beginning, like the idea of time was horrible. Like I remember someone saying like, oh, in a year or something, not even about that. And I was like, oh my God, like the thought of being like, even now, like, oh my God, I'm 7 years away from Lael. When I start really thinking about it, it really is very sad. But what alternative is there? But I did, in the beginning, it was, yeah, I did feel guilt, or like, no, 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 wait,
Yeah.
kind of, yes.
So,
Christina.
So I have a question as well. So we talk about grief is unique to each person. And I know that you were grieving, but you also had your son as well. So can you talk about how you dealt with your grief for yourself, and then how did you kind of, I don't want to say toggle, but how did you manage to be there for him as well?
Right. Well, it was, I felt when it happened, of course, the shock, but I also, it was a couple of things. I felt for him, of course, it was like you and I, but we already had this, it was already like that there might be some, that he might have some stuff going on, right? So it was like she died in July and he had this manic episode in January, February before, earlier that year. And it was bad. It was bad in the sense of like he couldn't really finish school. He went back. He didn't do any of the schoolwork. So this was the change that never happened before, like the classic, oh, someone's 20 and then all of a sudden everything's different. Um, so it was already in my head, like, I was a little bit in trauma about all of it. Like my daughter just tried killing herself, before she killed herself, and I didn't know if she was alive or dead for 90 minutes. And then 2 months later, he has this thing. And I'm like, what is going on? Um, and then when she died, um, I felt, well, first of all, I was like, of course, for you and I felt like I got to be strong, really strong for you and I, um, and for everyone else, and even other mothers. I just felt like I have to be a role model of like, it wasn't like conscious. It was just like, no, like, Isaac was falling apart at the funeral. I'm like, okay, like even in my head, it was like, I'm in it for the long haul. Like I am not meant to die. I want to live. That was like what I kept saying. People say, how are you? I'm like, I'm walking, I'm talking, I want to live. But with you and I, because he was already like, it was already like what's going on. He wasn't quite back to himself or whatever that meant. Um, and right after, so I was concerned about him because he was very numbed out. He was completely numbed out. Like he was like, the funeral, he wrote like this beautiful, essay, but it was very, um, intellectual and very numb. And then he was like numbed out and sleeping all the time and depressed. And we had this play. You see, the play is what, and he was already going to be taking a semester off of school because of his own thing. So of course, and we was still gonna he still didn't, he didn't go back. um, because it happened in the summer when she died. And we had this play that we all wrote together called The Pill. And it was mostly written by me and my son, but well, Lael wrote it as well, and my parents, like everyone contributed. It was like one of these, like everyone tell their part of the story. And it was about a family dealing with a girl who was suicidal and had anorexia, struggling with eating disorder. And so we got the yes, okay, that it was going to be produced the day she died, before she died, like nothing to do with it, but like the theater La Mama, which is a legendary theater in New York, said, yeah, we'll put it up in January. So it was like a huge celebration day for me. And I would be excited about it. I thought it'd be great because he really wrote it with me. So we were very involved with it, and he did come to all the rehearsals, but he was like a zombie. I mean, he was, and I was worried. So I try to be like strong and positive and not, I mean, I asked him like how he was feeling and stuff, and he had his own stuff, and then he was supposed to go back to school. And I was like, you're not going back, because he was so depressed. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I was like, stay here and do. And then he did. And then we went to the theater. I remember after our play was put up, this was like a moment. This was like a moment of the first happiness, actually, now that I think about it. I just like randomly picked a play. I was like, hey, do you want to see a play today? He's like, yeah. And I just looked up one today, ticks. It's called Harry Clark. And I had no idea. We just sat, we went in and we sat, and it was amazing. We're sitting there and I was like, oh my God. And I just looked at him in the middle of the show. And we both looked at each other like, this is fucking amazing. And we were both so happy. And then like after the play, we were just so excited by this show, which was so funny and brilliant and everything. And we both kind of got like really excited. Like it was like this excitement, and then he was starting, and so we kind of had that. That was like a first real moment of like, wow, pure joy. And then he was like, his meds were going. At that point, he was on meds, and it went up, and he might have had, and also he wrote like 300 pages of something, and kind of became Carrie Clark for a while. But it was so we're very close, you see, because all the years when she was sick and going back and forth to treatment. I mean, the one treatment center that she went to when she was 15, she was there for 17 months. and that was the fifth one. She was in other ones maybe for a summer, but this was like she's going because I had a breakdown. Like I have a kid, I have another child at home. Now I am not well. She went to this place, which saved her life, for like in Utah for like a year and a half. And that's a long time for a brother who's 11 or 12, to be dealing for a sister to be away. And it was just me and him, every day. Like we went out to dinner and he probably was worried about me as well a bit because I was very anxious until I got myself on track. But I really was worried about him. So I feel like it's always been this like Marla and Yanai team for a long time. And yeah, it was so it just wasn't, you know. And then again, like he seemed to be doing better for a while. So it was like, okay, he went back to school. He did okay. He finished. He did actually go. He totally went. He never smoked. He's been sober for years. Like not that he was, but that was like because we thought maybe that. And then he went back to school. He finished. He seemed great. He had a summer here. I was like, oh, I think and that was making me happy because I'm like, so much like, please let him be okay. That was like my main thing. And he was doing well and he decided to go back to live in California. He graduated college. He went to Pomona. And I was like, oh, I wish he would just stay, but he didn't. I was like, okay, but he's 25, whatever. He's going to do what he does. And then but 2 weeks as he got back is when his father got diagnosed with ALS. And I can tell you that diagnosis knocked the fuck out of me. I almost collapsed. Like, because that's like that's like, really? Like, of all things? Like, I kind of was like, this is like, what's worse than, your daughter jumping off the George Washington Bridge, getting ALS? And so I think that, and then COVID happened, boom. And I think, he acted like it didn't affect him, but in the beginning, like as if it doesn't, ALS doesn't exist. I don't believe in ALS, this kind of stuff.
So,
A lot of
It's
loss.
a long answer. I know. I'm sorry.
no, as I hear your story, it's so many of us have things that happen to us one after another, but other people, when they hear it, they look at you in amazement because it's like, oh no, that can't all happen. Now, come on, there's just too much for one
Right.
person. But truly, a lot of people do go through these things, and it's an individual choice to be strong or to get strong or to get the coaching that you need to get through it. Nobody needs to go through any of this alone. And that's one of the things that I learned from these wonderful ladies that I'm working with is that, I can have the smallest little grief issue and I can reach out and realize, yeah, that was a real issue. And it's okay that you had that issue. And, you can work through it. And sometimes in the middle of working through it, and, Christy, you can agree or not agree, but I'll start laughing at myself and say, oh, I shouldn't have thought that way. And she'll go, you're entitled.
Right.
And so hopefully the parents who are listening to this, the young people who are listening to this, you have to remember that you're not the only one hurting. We're all hurting around you. And it's not your responsibility, but there is help out there, and your daughter tried the help. And obviously it just wasn't enough for her.
Or for me, what I feel like with Lael is that she actually is she did everything, right? She really did. And she wasn't against it, where like my son has more of those issues, like, which is, because it's manifesting differently. So it's like a symptom of but she just, for me, it was like, she really did suffer with really, obviously major depressive. People said she's like one of the worst cases they've ever seen, and on paper, you'd never see it. You look at her, no one, like it didn't, but she just didn't make it. Like, I believe it took me 7 years. Okay, this I will tell you, as you counselors, it took me 7 years to actually have the feeling that she had a shot. Up until like when she died, I was like, I was in acceptance immediately. I was like, okay, well, she was depressed, and was I to keep her? And I wasn't someone to keep her here. And I had been thinking about that, like, because she was like, I'm a sick girl, mom, you don't understand. Like, but it took me 7 years to be like, you know what? No, it didn't, like, she had a chance. Like, if she had, like, meaning it wasn't like a definite that she was going to die and there was no hope. There's always hope. And she just that day, I know what the trigger was. There was a specific trigger, it happened, but it didn't mean that she wasn't fighting. And, one of her songs is called The Good Fight. And it's like her anthem. And it really is. And we're looking to partner with people because it's an amazing song. So she was fighting the good fight. She just slipped that day. That's how I look at it. Like, it wasn't even like, you know, she she did say a lot like I don't want to live, and she had it for a long time. But on the other hand, she would say, I know I have a great life, I have a great family, I have amazing friends. Like, she loved her apartment, like, all those, like, because at one point I was like, oh, she came back to New York, it's me. And then I'm like, no, she tried to kill herself in LA 2 times. It's nothing to do with um and we were very close, actually. She was a total mama's girl, by the way. Just anyway. But I did go to therapy, by the way. I didn't say that in my list. I did go. I mean, I went to Samaritans after the play. I went to Samaritans. I don't know if you know that organization. They have it's an organization that deals with people, survivors of suicide. And I went there like twice a month, and it was all different. It wasn't just parents. And then I had a therapist that I went to for many years. That helped. Everything helps, you know, whatever it takes. I will do whatever it takes. I'm a self-care, I believe in that. Right now, I don't have a therapist. Sometimes I think, oh, maybe I should, just given with everything that's going on. But the fellowship, like reaching out to people and fellowship. But like I see, like the questions that you asked, I could see how, you know, it's when
Well,
you slow down. I'm fast, right? So when I'm fast, I'm not slowing down. But if I slow it all down, and when I do, the feelings, trust me,
well,
are
I'm
there.
glad that you're able to share this with so many people. And like I said, especially at this time of year, um, I lost a friend in high school at this time of year.
Mhm.
And um, again, we thought that she was the happiest person in the whole world. Um, in fact, I wanted to have hair like her, and I wanted to date the guys that she dated. Um, and the day that I found out that she took her life, I thought, I guess I'm glad I don't have hair like her. That was the first thought that came to my mind because that's what I connected. Um, but she fought her demons as well. And I like your expression that your daughter just slipped on that day. It's not that that was the day that she planned to end it all. She slipped. And we
Yeah,
need to understand that.
she did. And that day was definitely, I mean, that suicide attempt, I know, was spur of the moment. It was definitely impulsive. Like the one before that one on election day wasn't. That was like she was planned. And that one no one saw coming. But this was like she was pissed. Someone, it was like a pissed off. And she definitely had depression. I'm not like saying that she wasn't suicidal. She definitely was always like, like, I do my research, mom, because I was, like the how to kill herself. And she picked a way this time that and I know she had it planned. She had it in her pocket, as we say. Like, it wasn't like she randomly is like, oh, I'm just gonna go jump off the bridge now. Like, no, she had it. Like, the next time I try to kill myself, because I'm gonna jump off the bridge, because she knows that the last thing we know, we got the phone back, but she already knew, it was like mortality, because nobody survives that. So that wasn't like an attempt. She knew. And she was on the phone with a friend, like texting while she was walking across the bridge, not saying she was on the bridge, just saying she was, I'm not going to go out tonight. I'm going to take a bath. She had every opportunity to reach out for help, but she had a slip. That night, she just decided, and that was that. And because she was angry, and this is my opinion. Of course, I'm like, if I had answered the phone at 6:30, she probably wouldn't have slipped that night, because I would have been like, don't worry about what happened. Like, I would have, you know, I know it's not my fault. I don't blame myself. I'm just saying that. Um, but I will say, because both my kids have these things, I know it's not me. I mean, you can't make someone, nothing can make someone have, like, these kind of mental illnesses, health struggles. But there are moments where I'm like, wait, like, why both my kids? Like, there are moments where I'm like, did I do something? Like, oh, like, I'm like, I'm sorry if I did. But I also know, but really deep down, I know I was a good mother. I did as much as I was there. I showed up. I was present. Perfect. No, I made mistakes. Of course I did. Who doesn't? But it wasn't like something horrific happened, like something that you can, could look at. But that's, as you guys know, like, it doesn't work that way. Even with suicide or stuff. There are people who could have had the most horrific things happen and they're never going to kill themselves, even if they think about it. And then there's someone you're like, okay, everything seems to be pretty okay because it's not, you know, yeah. So also for parents to, we do our best, and I just, yeah.
So as coaches, Christina, is there anything that you can share with families that may be listening at this time of the year? Is there anything that you can offer that maybe they should be looking for or thinking about?
I can share something.
Okay.
I took a class called PQR, and it is about just to help parents or anybody really to recognize. Actually, is it PQR? Or I might have it. Wait, I might have it right here. Um, it's QPR. So, but it is really helpful to help recognize when somebody is suicidal, and it stands for question, persuade, and refer. So a lot of times I think we think that we should avoid asking the question if they're suicidal. And what I learned from taking this was that, especially as a grief coach, if I'm at all questioning whether they might be suicidal or not, it's really important just to ask the question bluntly. You're not going to cause the person to suddenly become suicidal. So just if you're concerned that might be an issue, ask. So ask the question and then persuade them, if their answer is yes, that they are suicidal, to persuade them to either get help right away or get them to commit to not doing anything until you can get there with them and get them help. And then the R is refer, which is refer them to whoever can get help, who can help them. So I think though the very first thing, questioning, is so important. Don't be afraid to just bluntly ask the question, are you suicidal? And I've done it many, many times with clients. Just had to flat out ask them, are you suicidal? Do you have a plan? And then if they do, follow through with that and get them the help that they need.
That's great, Christy, because that's what I was saying earlier, is that I learned after she died that about questioning.
Yes.
And even her therapist had said, because her therapist was more of an eating disorder therapist, and they were very close. And she said, the one regret she had is that, whenever she would bring up the suicide, she would try to, distract her from it. And I realized that's not the way. So now with my son, I'm always like, are you suicidal?
Right. And oftentimes they want to talk about it, and there's no opening for it. It's being pushed away because it makes everybody uncomfortable. So if you just make it comfortable to talk about, just even talking about it is enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why this Lael Project, I want people to talk about it. I want them to know that they can talk about it, that you can say yes, you can ask, because that's something I didn't know about, the asking,
Well, I shared this once before. When my son was a senior in high school, he was the manager of the basketball team. And one of the kids on the basketball team he was pretty close with. I don't know what happened, but my son got very, very upset, very depressed, and he called him and told him that he wanted to kill himself. The young boy heard it. Young boy went and told his mother. Nobody called us. Nobody checked on my son. But a week later, we were at a basketball game, and the mother was sitting in the stands and very loudly yelled over to me, "Get your son out of here. You know he's suicidal." Now, the best thing would have been when the son heard it, when the mother heard it, to have called and tell me what was going on. So Christy, I totally agree with you. Ask the question. And if you hear something, make sure that you get that person some help. Luckily, my son was looking for attention. He was depressed, and that's what he came up with. because when we asked him, did he have a plan? He had no idea. In fact, he told us of all the things he wouldn't do because it would hurt or he'd get sick. And so we sort of knew, yeah, you probably aren't, but you can't walk around saying these things because it's not safe for you. It's not safe for other people. So, anybody who's out there listening, if you need any assistance, there is a suicide hotline, and I'm going to put that into the show notes this time, so that it will be out there. We're going to put information about the Lael Project as well. I'm hoping people will follow it, and we'll get to, you say December is when.
December 6th will be the first single, and I guess it'll be on all the, it'll be on Spotify and Amazon and Apple Music and, everywhere. It'll be everywhere. So definitely, and then the video as well will be out with it. Because, and can I just add one thing? Because just like,
Sure.
for example, today, it was my son's birthday. I don't usually talk about him, so now I'm like, it was his birthday, and he's in India, and he was extremely depressed, and he can be very depressed, and then 3 hours later be like, I'm fine now, I'm not depressed. It's a lot of,
Right.
but he was extremely depressed sounding, and leaving me an audio text, and we've been like back and forth a lot with like more positive stuff. So of course, and this would happen the other day when he was like a little like, I don't belong anywhere, and it's like all the mood stuff, but not just mood stuff, because he does say I want to die a lot. And and so I always say he's suicidal. So today he left this message saying he was depressed, and I just said, listen, although first he was like, thank you for loving me. I was like, listen, I love you, and there's reminding there's supports out there, and I keep sending him like all the emergency numbers where he is in India. Like there's the area where he is like Oroville here, and I'm like, here it is, 24/7, emergency hotline, because what else can I do? And I'm telling him I love him, and there is support and all that stuff. And when we do speak, I do always say like, are you? And is there a plan? And he's like, you know, So yes, I'm just, as I'm living it in real time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly do appreciate you. And I'm sure that our listeners will appreciate knowing that if they're going through something like this, they are not alone. Again, all our coaches, they are listed in the show notes. So if you're looking for a grief coach, I know that they are all available, and they are all excellent because I have talked to each and every one of them, and they've given me a lot of support. So again, Marla, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope everybody can have as happy of a holiday season as they choose to make it. And with that, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, Marla.